Precisely. Ow. I have a cut on my lip and it really bothers me. Just vibing for a second.
Get your headbang in, Christian.
Oh my goodness. I feel like at one time he was a headbanger.
No.
At one time, he's a deadhead.
No, that's different.
I mean, I had a metal phase, but it wasn't like anything crazy.
I can imagine that. But, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you definitely did it. Like maybe 12 years old, you and your friends were in the treehouse, like jamming out.
No.
That's what I figured.
I don't think I've ever been in a treehouse, like a real one.
What?
I don't think so. I used to climb trees.
But never in a treehouse?
Maybe like once.
Maybe we should check on you.
Maybe twice. I don't know.
We built a treehouse, and my dad put it on the ground, and I thought that's really stupid.
So it was a playhouse.
Yeah, right. But it was in between two trees, so he called it a treehouse.
It's kind of like Zach Galifianakis, his show, Between Two Ferns. You know?
My next door neighbor had a real treehouse, like up, and we could zip line down. So then we would move the zip line all around. That was fun.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, true treehouse masters.
Yeah,
anyway.
awesome.
What are we talking about today, guys?
So, screwing the pre-scripted blog post. Sorry, peoples. But we're talking about the National Association of Realtors lawsuit settlement from last week. Kind of crazy.
Everyone's probably hearing about it in the news.
I think everyone's hearing about it. And it's hitting people differently. Like some people are like, oh my God, this is bad for you. Other people are like, oh, this is scary. And some people just don't really understand it. I've been hit up this weekend by pretty much all three of those things. My drive into the office today was with like a longtime friend that I don't talk too much, but he was like, I saw your post. Like, is everything okay? Like, what's going on? And then I got an email from my uncle, and I got a text message from my cousin, and I got a text message from a past client, like, you know, scared or worried or, oh, this is really bad for you. And I feel like people just don't know. So,
well, also, can you give some more context to your post? Because it was absolutely outrageous.
All right.
It was very clickbaity.
I didn't
It's
see
super
the post.
clickbaitty.
And so, like,
Can
yes,
we get
this
a
is
reference shot?
All right.
This is a
Liv?
huge,
Well, let's
this is
back
a
up a
huge
second.
lawsuit to begin with.
There you go. Start with that.
Very big. But Mike's post to just like people hanging out, it was something along the lines like 600,000 agents are going to be leaving or finding a new career, essentially.
Right. Yep.
And 600,000 is a freaking massive number. So when you put something like that out and they're going to be leaving an entire industry.
But it's also how many realtors do we have right now? One. And especially based on last year's number of only 1 in 5 closed even one deal last year.
I think it was like 50% of agents only closed 1 or 0 deals.
Yep.
I think it was 1 in 5, not 50%.
No, I think it's 50. 1 in 5.
It's 49%.
Yeah, 1 in 5 would be.
49% of all
What
people.
was it at Tom Ferry?
49%.
Cap.
Sus. But the point here is that like 40% of all realtors are basically going to give up their job.
Yeah.
And when you think about this, just think about this for a very foundational thing. So if National Association of Realtors was under fire for what they were calling collusion between buyers and sellers agents, and really it's the brokerage against other brokers, it's not so much like individual agents, but basically what they're saying is that the large brokerages colluded against sellers to force them to pay 6%.
It's also like crazy that they say these large brokers when I think this happens across the entire nation. It's not just one broker, this one large broker, or 2 large brokers.
Right.
Like this was something that was happening all over. Mm-hmm. So it's a very like weird term to throw around.
Right. Well, and what they're alleging is that basically you forced me to pay a buyer's agent when I didn't want to. And it's like, okay, so if you guys know anything about the judicial system, and not getting all judicial on everybody, but basically if there's a lawsuit or especially a claim made like this, that a lower court wouldn't have the authority or feel confident in making a ruling, they'll find in the plaintiff's position to, move it up the chain and allow a higher court to make a ruling. And so, yeah, they found National Association of Realtors guilty. They slapped down a fine of like $1.8 billion. And last week, the settlement was brought in at $418 million, right? So in theory, that's a humongous amount of money, but there's still going to be an appeal. There's still going to be a lot of things that change. But the big thing that happened was National Association of Realtors, as a part of their settlement, said, hey, we're going to make sure that sellers feel confident by removing the advertised buyer's agency requirement in the multiple listing system. So
Was it required though?
Well, the multiple listing system required something.
You can put like $1 in there.
You could put $1, but it required something.
Did you put 0?
I don't think you could put 0. So what happened now is that now the rules are going to say there's no advertised buyer's agency compensation until this gets through the court system and they figure out what really makes sense and what doesn't to protect the community. But there's a greater risk here. There's a lot of factors that are at play. And just to like throw a wild one at you that you probably haven't thought about, what about your VA buyers?
No, that's like, well, I do, we'll call it 90% VA buyers.
At least 80. Yeah. I mean, a huge amount of your
so
business.
Like, where does that come from? How does that work? Is that now that if it is a VA buyer, now the seller has to take this on, or is there a flat rate for VA buyers that the VA maybe now pays or whoever? But like, there's so much unknown for any part of this, and it can change drastically. VA, as you all know, like 0% down payment, and a lot of people think you can purchase a home with $0, which I guess theoretically, if you didn't do an inspection or you didn't have an EMD or
Right.
you don't have a down payment, you didn't cover any closing costs, you could. But in today's day and age, it's very unlikely. So now you're adding more expense to a VA buyer or just a buyer in general, and it can be very difficult. So then I look at what does that lead to? I feel like maybe this leads to more lawsuits unless they figure it out. Because for this one buyer, and this isn't going to be the case for everybody, but for people who cannot afford representation, they go straight to the listing agent. Now they have no representation.
But also forget that the VA prohibits us from charging representation fees.
Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that actually.
Right. So
yes, the VA
for
does
buyers
prohibit
that don't have the capacity to have representation, whether it's a buyer that can't afford, the VA who prevents the charge, or other subsidized programs coming out and saying we're preventing realtor charges. Well, where's the representation?
Yeah.
And like I said this morning, if a for sale by owner sells for between 5 to 7% less than a home sold with a realtor, there's a reason for that. It's because they're willing to give up their equity to the buyer. We don't want to deal with realtors, or maybe they just don't know the market well enough to understand it. Maybe they haven't yet figured out how to market their home at a high value, but they're giving up that equity. They're selling their home for 6% less. Well, is that a real value when there's so much on the table with buyer's agency and not knowing how to go about the process, especially for first-time home buyers?
Yeah, I think that especially like with the conditions of the market now, and we're heading into spring and summer, and we're heading to an election year, like there's so much shit that has just changed. And how is this going to affect the housing market? We were expecting 5% rates, and I can already feel things kind of heating up literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And so now that you throw this change in there, how does this affect the spring and summer market? How does this affect people purchasing a home later on when like it is election time, and then going into the new year? It's just like so many different avenues this could go. Seriously.
So ultimately, if the lawsuit, the settlement now says that there's no advertised buyer's agency compensation, it puts the onus of a buyer's agency representation directly on the buyer. Yeah. And here's the challenge, and this is the thing that everyone should take away from this. It doesn't actually change anything, because the onus of representation was always on the buyer.
Yeah.
The onus of representation was always there for the buyer to sign an agreement. Here in Maryland, it's always been this way. Since the early 2000s, when I got licensed, it was always that there was a buyer's agency representation agreement.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Technically, there's not a change on the buyer's end. It's a change on the sellers. But now that the change on the sellers is not what it was, or
right.
You can't advertise this anymore, now those effects do change what a buyer is now probably more likely to cover, an expense that they're more likely to take on.
Totally
right?
Agree.
And with the competitiveness, people need to have a down payment. People need to cover as many closing costs as they can. Now they have to pay for representation, and I'm all about it. because I think people should have representation, but it's going to be interesting to see.
Do you think that these are going to be the main grounds for the appeal?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of challenges. I don't know that I really have a real problem with the lawsuit as it was presented. I think that what our foundation of real estate is founded in is clear cooperation. Yeah. And that was, I don't even know, 80s, 70s, 60s. It was a long time ago when they used to walk from office to office to office offering compensation. And so clear cooperation said you have to offer everyone equal compensation. You can't offer this company X and that company Y and that company Z. So yeah, I mean, clear cooperation can go away and that's fine. But I think if you take the value of paying a realtor out of your value, the property should be worth that much less. It would be like saying this buyer that bought 123 Main Street and paid $450,000 walked into the property next door and said, I want to buy your house for $450,000, but I want you to give me a $20,000 closing cost consideration. And yet the third property should be worth more because there were two that sold on the same street for $450. No material value as an appraisal would be considered, would be that the third property would be valued at $450 for the first property, $450 minus $20,000 in closing cost consideration, and then the third property would be valued with those two comps in mind. Why would real estate commission not be one of those? If you chose to hire a realtor, it should be worth more money because you materially put more money into the investment. Now, how they break that down, I don't know. And that's outside of our realm. It's outside of National Association of Realtors. It's now into the lending world. But like...
Yeah, because you can't really finance any... Yeah. At least today, you can't finance any commissions or fees paid.
Right.
You know, and you can't even do that for your lender. You have, if you want your closing costs, and this is a term that we hear a lot, if you want closing costs to be rolled into a loan, what I tell people is increase your price, ask the seller to cover it.
Right.
You know, and that's essentially the same goal here. But as it sits today, you cannot finance any fees, commissions, anything like that to an agent, to any other party.
No. I mean, you can finance it as a closing cost, but you're limited based on the lender prescribed limitations. I mean, is that going to be the thing that changes? Is the lender prescribed limitation going to change? Is the expectation of compensation going to change? You know, where listing agents are now offering bonuses rather than compensation.
But now think, well, like out of curiosity, could this lead to hourly rates by agents? And how does that work out? Do you have to get that in a written agreement?
How much money does Zillow generate marketing to buyers and sellers, right? And so Zillow offers an instantaneous showing request. So does Redfin. Yeah. Redfin pays that agent per hour. And they're paying that agent per hour based on the ideology that you're going to ultimately buy a house and Redfin is going to collect a buyer's agency compensation. Are they going to change that model to now forcing the consumer to pay an hourly rate? Will the consumer pay, you for showing them a house at $50 an hour? I don't know. Will that be an added expense? Will it be a lesser expense? Everybody's touting this as it's going to save money for buyers. And when I say everybody, worse. I'm saying like CNN, MSNBC, Financial News World. But the reality is
that would increase the amount.
Right. Well, and the funny one was John made a comment earlier, saw a TikTok, and it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to offer you, $400,000 for your home, but I don't want to use a realtor, so can I save 3%? And they say, no, I'll just sell it to that guy that's going to offer me $400,000 for your home. So ultimately, it's not going to save anybody money. It's only going to net the sellers more.
Yeah.
Thus, proliferating, making the rich richer.
I also like to try and dumb some of these things down too.
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
But like, as a seller, how do you get there in the first place? Well, you buy a damn house, right? And at one point, every buyer, up until this point, either pays very minimal or no commissions to their agent.
Well, that's not true. They pay it because the listing agent is offering it.
Well, right.
And the buyer pays the expense. So now we're talking about lessening the value that the buyer's paying for? No, of course we're not.
I'm talking before this happened, though.
Well, the buyer pays the expense.
Right.
The buyer pays the $300,000 for the house, and then the seller deducts from their expenses, buyer's agent and seller's agent, and so on and so forth.
Right. So if the buyer's agent had charged something, it was probably very minimal, not 2, 3, whatever percent. The buyer was out of pocket something little, and then the sellers deducted it from their expense of the sale of the home, right? So now you're a seller. And like I don't know, like you're going to sell this property, you're going to go somewhere, right? So whether you take it from the sale of your current house, there's 6% of, or at least what it used to be. Now it's 3%. Well, what happens when you go buy another house? That money's still going to be there. So it's like, it doesn't, you're going to pay it somewhere down the line. And most likely the agent that you list with, you're probably going to buy with, unless you have a terrible experience, which then I can't help you. I mean, I can, I'll help you buy, but, the money's going to come from somewhere. So we just like dumb that down. That's something that I'm like just thinking about. At where does that have a huge effect? And it would be if someone ends up passing away and not having to buy a new house, or they don't buy a new house. Let's say they're an investor, right? But I don't know. I still don't think that this lawsuit helps the young guys.
I think it was just slammed on the industry. It's way overdue. Let me say that. It's way overdue. I've been saying this for a long time. What I think is going to happen is clear cooperation is going to go away. And what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up negotiating compensation from the beginning. So you asked earlier, what was the 4% listing that I just signed with my client? Well, my client came to me and said, hey, look, I want to do this and I'm seeing this and I have a question about that. And I really just want to pay 4%. And I said, yes. No questions, no talking. Right? And then like a week later, when we were getting ready to sign the documentation, I said to him, hey, when you suggested 4%, what did that mean to you? What were you expecting to come out of that? And I just waited to hear what he said. And you know what he said? I don't care. I just want to pay 4%. And I said, well, my team and I have structured our situation so that our expenses on listings are typically between 3 and 3.5%. And that's where we try to collect. While I know that you're a great client and we've worked together a lot, we have a lot of listings coming up down the road. I have no problem giving you a value and maybe doing this at a discount, maybe 2.75 or 2.8%. But then we're offering the buyer's agent 0.5%, 1%, 1.25%. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. I think that's insulting. And he goes, look, I don't care if you want to collect 4% and pay the buyer's agent nothing. And I said, hey, great. How about we do this? We're going to sign a listing agreement at 4%. And then when the buyer comes along, we're going to tell them, ask us to pay your commission. And you'll pay it. And he goes, no, I won't. As long as it's less than 4%. I said, no, you won't. If the buyer offers you $50,000 more than you're asking for, and then they ask you to pay 3% towards buyer's agency compensation, you would pay it. And he goes, well, yeah. So then what's the difference? It's just a negotiable position now. It just means if a buyer wants representation, they deserve it, they should have it. And by the way, every single buyer should have it. The question becomes, how much are we going to give away for how much money? And how much are we going to ask the seller to pay for? And somehow, some way, that's going to have to get worked into the transaction, whether it's a closing cost or whether it's a seller paid concession or whether it's just flat rate, but a seller real estate compensation structure.
But now, I don't know. Like if it comes in a seller credit or like you ask for closing cost assistance, that's what it is. You still have to take into the fact that the house has to appraise.
Yep.
And now you're still shelling out this money for
right back to square one.
Right.
Yep.
So like it doesn't matter if you offer $50,000 over and then you ask for 3% closing cost commission or closing cost coverage to cover your agent's commission. That property still has to appraise, and if not, the seller's now shelling out 3%. And then I guess the other question would be is like where in that range does it appraise? Is it $50,000 over? Is it at or under that 3% mark? And then so now it opens up all these doors.
Maybe appraisers shouldn't know the sales price. Like we're all focusing on real estate commission because it's such a large part of our gross domestic product. And there's so many industries that are out here for our billions and billions of dollars of generated wealth. But also look at how many people are able to put food on the table through the $5,000 compensation that they earn from a real estate transaction. Rather than looking at it like one big, massive industry. What if somebody came along and was like, you know what? Cars are fucking stupid. We only need to sell airplanes, outlaw cars. I mean, like, I'm not complaining about that, but it's just, it would ruin the lives of so many people because it's no longer impacting just the big car manufacturers, Ford and Chevy, right? We're not talking about Coldwell Banker and Keller Williams and Long and Foster and EXP. We're talking about fucking individual agents that got their license 4 and 6 and 16 years ago. We're talking about grandmothers that are selling 7 houses a year to help pay for their grandchild's education. We're talking about single moms that got into the industry to get away from, being burdened by the expenses and the management of their ex-partner or otherwise.
I think like the general public jumps, and I feel like it can be fault to news headlines, but like jump to see, big pharma is after them, and
right.
People are out to get you, when in reality, the people that are helping you buy and sell real estate or invest or rent or lease, whatever term you want to use, are people like me, people like Mike, Heather, like well trusted, and we have relationships and like family, like your family, your friends, your neighbor, right? Like we're all here together. So like when these headlines come out, I feel like a lot of people are looking into it as like, oh, the fucking real estate is fucking me over. Fuck agents.
Right.
NAR sucks, which I'm not a fan of them, but I have to work with them every single day. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. Have you thought of like where it might go, what it might be?
I was looking for this post on Facebook that someone put on. It was so astute. It kind of hit each one of the button points that we've been talking about. What I really and genuinely think that real estate compensation is going to become a negotiable position for a seller. It's going to be involved in the appraisal value of a home. And ultimately, it's going to create an opportunity for people to see what we do as a real difference maker. When they sit down and they talk with a real estate agent, they're going to really be burdened by this is what it actually takes to buy a home. And it's not going to be a bad thing. It's going to be the exact same thing as we've done for hundreds of years, just putting a bigger onus of responsibility on Zillow to be the good guy, on your local realtor Tom to be the good guy. It's just putting a bigger onus of responsibility on each one of us to do our jobs at a high level. And the reason that 600,000 agents are going to leave is because they're not qualified to do our jobs. The thing that I said to my friend earlier this morning was, look, my team doesn't even know any different. They're always having their clients sign an agreement. They're always having their clients understand the value that they bring to the table and routinely talking to them about their expenses, their costs, and encumbrances as they look to settle. The most valuable thing that we can do as realtors is give people the truth. And so when we have clients that go to settlement and settlement goes A-OK with no issues, then they think, well, we didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, the reason we didn't do anything is because we prepared you for it from the beginning. When everything is a shit show and it's all awry, it's because the consumer doesn't understand the value that we bring. And then they want to just argue about it the whole time.
Yeah, that's kind of funny they bring it up. One of my transactions right now, the solar panel company has given us a run for our fucking money. And just
we stand a good solar
pain
panel
in the butt. And then, we're not working with a mortgage company as our lender. Like they don't specialize in mortgages. They're a bank, insurance company, do mortgages. They might as well frickin' be a baseball coach of some sort. Like, I don't know, just random crap. They don't have a specialty. And then I'm on the phone with my client. I'm like, hey, dude, you remember when we spent 30 minutes on the phone and I told you exactly what to expect from this mortgage company? Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, yeah. It's like, right. Here's where we're at, and here's what I had told you what was likely to happen. And then the cherry on top is the solar panel company. You never know how they're going to react. You don't know what each solar panel company's department is like when you need to get your transfer documents, loan details, lease documents. So it can be a lot of moving parts, and they definitely don't see a whole lot of that until
Who is it through?
What?
Their solar panels.
I have to look at the name. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So not Tesla.
No.
Well,
no.
And ultimately the question that you have to ask yourself is, are you bringing enough value to your consumer that they would feel confident in your services to pay you? That's it. That's the only difference that we have between last week and this week. In the end of the day, it's still our responsibility to bring the most amount of value. It's still our responsibility to educate our consumer and share with them the activity that's going on. That's all we're going to be talking about all week long. But the focal point is continuing to do our jobs at a high level, bringing as much value as we can, and making sure that people understand the difference between what 6% commission means and what 3% commission means.
Yeah, well, no, I agree with you. I feel like people throw around that word value a lot, and it's one of those buzzwords, kind of like house hacking.
Yep.
But I would say it's just doing your job, but let's add that, doing a great job. Like being a qualified real estate professional and being able to properly show, execute, and explain that.
Let's talk about right now. Right now today, your client goes out to buy a home. They want to buy a house. They want to pay list price. They want to put down 20%, and they want to get it with no inspections. Are they winning the house?
Okay, so you said list price, 20% down, no inspections?
Correct.
Maybe.
Depends.
Y'all are nice. My answer is no. Right? Like,
well, dude,
in today's market right now, it's probably not happening. It's so aggressive today. We're having houses.
We just said like the same thing. You said what's probably not happening.
Yeah,
and then you just didn't let, I was going to explain.
No.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like, I'm saying, no, it's not going to happen. Like, if you're coming to me saying, oh, will I win this bid offering full list price on day one on the market? No, you won't.
Totally different question than you asked.
Yeah, but like, it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. And if that was the question, I would have said no.
Here's the thing. I feel like the addendum to the contract are now just as important as the offer price. And so I feel like with the terms that you just said, that's a pretty safe deal. If you're a 20% buyer, no inspections, no contingencies, with a...
No.
I'm not saying it's
somebody's going to pay 3 or 7% over list price.
I would agree with both of you, but I think there's other details that you need to look at as an agent.
But my point here is to say that if you're coming in going, yeah, that's okay, good job, right? Right now, the consumer's not going to win with that kind of an offer. The consumer's only going to win with a real competitive offer that says, hey, I want to buy this home. I'm going to give up everything, my blood and my firstborn, to win this competition. Are we all of a sudden worth nothing? No, I think we put you in that position to be successful. And then further down the road, we found ways to make your investment worthwhile by giving you advice as far as rehab or rehabilitation, by giving you advice towards getting home equity line of credit, by giving you advice as to other ways to invest your money for profit, by giving you advice as to ways to maximize on the sale of your home. It's not buying a house and making it like, oh my God, our value is so present every time you transact. That's not the value that we bring to the table. The value that we bring to the table is protecting you while you transact, plus everything else along the way. And I just feel like everybody's so set on like, well, I could do this myself. Yes, you could. There's no question in my mind. But so could for sale by owners. And nationally, 5 to 7% less than their competition in the market represented by realtors. And all I'm asking is, if you're looking at this compensation and this lawsuit, this settlement, and saying, hey, we're going to save 3%, what I'm saying to you is, where's that 3% coming from? Because like you said before, it's going to go into your next transaction. So you're effectively net zero.
Right.
And maybe net negative because you saved $17,000 on the sale of your $550,000 house by paying a buyer's agent. But when you moved up and you bought a $900,000 house and you used your agent and you paid your agent, well, 2.5% of 900 is an awful lot more than 3% of 525.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like for me, I'm looking at saying effectively it's a net negative, it's a net zero. And really what we should be talking about is the value, right? The word that we're bringing to the consumer. And that's what the consumer should be asking. Hey, what value do I get when I work with you? Not what's the cost. Imagine if you walked into McDonald's and you didn't look at any of the other food, you only looked at the dollar menu.
I feel like the dollar menu doesn't exist anymore, but
yeah, but my point is like the value menu, I think they call it. I think they call it the value menu. But like, if that's where your value is placed, then that's where your value is placed. And there are brokers in the market that do that already today. We didn't need a lawsuit to tell us this. You put out your value, you put out your compensation structure, and people are going to perceive it no matter whether we bring good or bad. They're going to like what we have to offer. They're not going to like what we have to offer. It's the exact same thing that we did yesterday.
I agree.
Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, long drawn out. We're going to be talking about this for months and months and months. But if you guys don't know, if you want to read more, you can always go to our website. We did a blog about this a couple months back when the $1.8 billion got found. There's going to be another one coming out here soon. We're going to be talking about it today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. I already know. So if you have questions, reach out to me on Instagram at michael.frank, or you could go to our website at frankoliverco.com, and you can always reach all of us there.
Did you change your Instagram handle?
michael.frank00.
You didn't say
Oh,
that.
No, it's michael.frank___.
There you go.
So
people.
sorry.
You can go to my page instead, Christian the Deadhead, and we'll keep
I'm
it easy.
done. Or Heather Kelley 230, whatever works for you.
We'll talk to you guys real soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
What's up, guys? Thanks for watching. For more information on the housing market, Real Estate 101, how you can leverage your position in today's market, and so much more, click on the link below. If you like this video or have a burning real estate question you'd like us to answer, leave us a comment and let us know. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you again real soon.